Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I am Pyrus, and I usually post random content on my YouTube. Today I'm going to post a random story, and it happens through the character logs of several characters. However, today this only will be told by through the eyes of one character, and if many people like the way the story goes, perhaps I'll post the full story and allow people to read it by themselves by scrolling through the video, or just just listening to me speak and talk about it. This is a very touchy topic, and that's why I've chosen this topic today to talk about. Remember, please, that this video contains violence, coarse language, and very dark scenes that wouldn't be fitting to all audiences. If you're immature, please do not comment on this video, and if you get offended by everything, just don't bother, okay? So the character's log is Dany Bones. That's his name. This is his first log. Title topic. The title topic of what he's doing is St. Claus Bistro's Revelation. Location, Draco City, the Dragonlands. Race, he's a human. Date of the year, December 1st. Clean up, wash, toss, prepare your clothes, and get your fitting attire on. Thomas Kurt wore his usual customized coat, and Harris his usual dumb uniform, but I stuck to the toga. If you want to make it somewhere within the Dragonlands, you need to promote the people by wearing what they wear. Think how they think. Buy the members of the Senate out like we do, and most of all, join them at dinner. I felt defiled so much and uneasy after this incident I had with this whore. I took a liking to her, and I later on vomited when I found out she was a he all along. He that sought to change his gender, he who is inhuman, he who is an abomination, and all the worst things one can imagine. Our society was getting in danger. This transgender and LGBTQ movement was getting out of hand. It started first with gay parades, and we didn't complain with the exception of having to pay taxes for their protection every time they marched in the streets naked. Who pays for my protection? Who pays for the stress I endure in the Senate? Who pays for my suffering, pain, and anguish? Who pays for my luxuries in my life? The answer? Me, and only me. I don't get paid for parading naked, and I'll never expect that of anyone, but that's how it all started. You're right, Dany, Thomas asked, and I knew he was being sarcastic. We were all sitting around the stone table with wooden chairs surrounding it. Harris was on my other side, and Thomas was in the middle to our right. We weren't expecting anyone. Thomas was dressed back in his typical attire, along with Harris, and I remained in the toga as we decided to hit St. Claus Bistro that overlooked the entire Cathedral of Notre Dame, also known as our heaven of the Dragonlands. We knew the boss was in the mass already, and we honestly didn't wish to attend it. We wanted to find every possible excuse we could to avoid most of the time spent within it, and we would use the excuse that the job took longer than expected just to get out of it, even though it didn't. The whore was long dead, its body disposed of, and by now probably eaten by the fishes of the blind Rizal. Before I continue, people, Rizal are a race of half Khazari and half Elven people, and if I had to go to the manual monsters explanation, it would be a lot longer than this. Yo, Tommy, give him a break! Harry spoke out for me as I kept eating on the spaghetti and meatballs that was very delicious. Chewing on his food, Thomas joked again, and I lowered my fork, gave him a look. Or throwing up on the thought of a fucking tranny. He held a cigar and I stopped chewing. I wanted to get up and punch his fucking face. Can we stop fucking mentioning that? The deed is done, Tommy. Harris was right, but Thomas turned his head coldly to him, laying it forward before stating, So is my money. What he fucked and calls it made me some good profit. Profit I had to lose now. He didn't let that go, and I never understood why. I chewed, swallowed my food, and reached for a glass of sparkling water on the table to drink it. He didn't have glass cups like these anywhere in the world besides the Dragonlands. Beautiful little creations, and elves made them? How the fuck? And to pause the story yet again, elves are blind creatures in my book, and they cannot see. They're not typical as the other elves from most fiction. It was an abomination to all that human stood for. Although this is humanity, and my apologies. It was inhuman. I voiced my righteous opinion, and Harrison gazed upon Thomas, worried. But Kurt resulted in smacking me across the back of my head. "Keep your voice down, Senator." He pointed at me, and I reached for the rag over the table to wipe my mouth. "You don't want to lose your rep." I then threw the rag over the table forcefully before I stated, "For what? Who the fuck cares about their little movement? They fucking have their gay parades all over our city streets, and it affects our taxes. Why can't I parade fucking naked on the street and get paid for it by the city, huh? I think everyone in here is fucking tired to pay protection for something we should allow to be beaten up. If someone asks for a fight, by all means, let them." Thomas rolled his eyes and shook his head. "Don't you shake your head and roll your eyes at me," I said. "Think about it, Tommy. We slave like hard, good-working auxiliaries." I continued, and then Thomas made his first comeback. "I agree that it is ridiculous that we pay taxes for their protection. But if they want to march on the city's streets, let them. There are so many proactive nudist parties out there. Why should I give a fuck? Or any of us, huh?" Thomas voiced his opinion, and I simply leaned my head, waved my hand around for him to lay off. "Good. Then we both agree that paying taxes for the LGBTQ movement is stupid. Now can you lay off my back and let me eat?" I returned to my place, and Thomas waved his own hand, raised his head, not believing that I tried to avoid the conversation that easy. Do you know what LBTQ stands for, Boner?" I hated that nickname, but I leaned back to my seat because once he leaned forward, continued the conversation, I knew where he was going with this. L is for lesbian, B is for bisexual, T is for transgender, Q is for queers. Now what do they all have in common, Dany? Harris then spoke for me and gave a very good answer to Thomas. "They're all wasting our taxes?" Thomas turned his head, annoyed by Harris's response. "Besides that, but that wasn't the answer Kurt was looking for." "I don't know. They're all prosecuted?" Kurt then snapped his fingers and pointed at me. "Bingo! Just like slaves and gladiators are. For instance, the Draconians prosecuted us for being humans. All of us humans, simply for being human, my apologies, for not being a Draconian. Hell, they even prosecuted Harus for having half human blood, and back in the day it was so bad that they called our blood impure or black blood. What does that remind you of, from the human period?" Harris and I shrugged our shoulders, our heads as Thomas rolled his eyes, clearly a student of history. "We prosecuted black bloods ourselves like humans, like black people, and we even prosecuted those yellow-blooded, strange-eyed sort of people that ended up sinking underneath the waves. When they went extinct, poof, the racism was gone. When the Harpies became our new enemies, poof, another racist movement was gone. And now we sit side by side with the blacks. Now we all love each other because we need each other, and because we are racist against Harpies. We just simply replaced one problem with another." Harris seemed quite interested in the conversation. All I could do was wonder what this had to do with the LGBTQ movement. I didn't understand. "What does this have to do with slaves and gladiators?" Thomas leaned back over his seat once Harris asked him this very question. "It's all just a phase, just like racism. It will go away, or another problem will replace it, or just another problem will be added on top of it. There's no end to stupidity." He voiced his opinions, much to our dismay. "Like it always does." Harris looked down disappointedly, and I looked at my food. I disliked how he put it, but even I had to admit he was right as I was playing around with my meatballs. "People don't know what the fuck they want, and they have so much fucking other shit to worry about. You glorified the LGBTQ movement, and boom, you're suddenly a hero, and got the support of the majority of twisted fucks. But to their eyes, we are all twisted fucks. But we are also responsible for the current situation of things." Harris and I both looked at him. Both of us said, "How the fuck are we responsible?" Harris agreed and pointed at me. "Yeah, man, how?" Thomas pointed at Harris. "You for assisting Dany and me," he revealed before he pointed to me next. "Dany for not controlling his boner and crying to the boss. I looked away from him and reached for my fork because he would just not stop. And all of us were killing people who don't share our mutual ways of everyday life. I'm not just saying it is both of your guys' fault, but mine too. I'm equally guilty like the both of you. But unlike both of you, I only do it when business tells me I gotta do it. For instance, when Warner here fucks a transgender and whines to the boss how he was violated before the boss turns to me asking me to kill her, I lowered my fork and raised my hands over the table, not believing how he just casually spoke about it all. Thank God we were in a private room where elven ears could not hear anything that we talked about. It corrected him. I corrected him. Him, her, it, who the fuck cares? The point is that he spoke again, but I again corrected him. It, and he continued like he didn't even hear me. Made me good profits. Hell, he continued. It, and I continued to correct him, was my number one prostitute. I don't give a fuck about her. He continued, and I again would correct him. It. Harris smirked as he was listening to us both. I gave a fuck about the profits. I don't care about their movement. Hell, I don't even care about people's opinions most of the time. But what I care about is friends talking behind my back. Do you feel me? I then realized he was trying to tell me all along. And then I looked at him, deciding one important decision to all of this to avoid any more humiliation at the table. I'm really sorry for screwing up my own readings. I'm sorry for causing you strain on your business, Tommy, and for talking behind your back, alright? I'm sorry. I apologized to him, and he leaned back to his seat, waved his right hand at me that held the cigar before he stated, "That's all I wanted to hear." Harris looked at me and then at him. He did not want it to stop, it seemed. So the gladiator and slave thing is another phase. When will that end? Thomas looked at him and pointed. It will start from the lower mainland, Alfheim and Svartalfheim, because we all know the elven vixens are even rebellious here. They, however, unlike the LGBTQ, will get attention and will earn their rights. The other silly movement with rainbow flag, though, won't, however. I raised my head and wondered why. Why? And so I asked. Because no one can take a rainbow flag seriously, and not everyone is a queer. He reached down onto his plate with his left hand for a sausage he raised and then chewed on in front of us that fit the moment he responded like that. Harris almost died laughing and hid his smile from him with a rag. And the more they parade, waste our taxes like that, the more people would just be pissed off at them. Sure, people would say we are ignorant and ignore them, but he then lowered half of the sausage to the table and swallowed what little he had of it in his mouth. In the end, they just make 1/8 of the world, and with slavery still in their way, we will keep on deporting them to the slave pits and fighting pits. What the fuck do we care? Business is business, am I right? Harris nodded his head, and I nodded my head, agreeing with him. Now you might ask me, is it alright to change gender? No, but it is to them. Do I view it as right? No, I believe that you're born as you're born, and there is no problem with that. But they see a problem with themselves, and so let them consume themselves. Hell, we consume ourselves with guilt, simple pleasures, drama, ignorance. It is the way of the world. Everyone has something toxic about them that ends up bringing them to the grave earlier or fills them with anxiety. They believe that changing gender will cure them of their depression or make them feel whole. Right, good, let them. More money for us, for their little operations and less crimes, drama on the streets. If they parade, let the people handle it. We have our own problems. He then pointed at my plate. Now shut up and eat your meatballs. After this, Harris, dress in some more fitting clothes for mass, for God's sake. Harris raised his hands with confusion. What's wrong with what I'm wearing? Thomas rolled his eyes. You can't bring a fucking cowboy attire to a mass, you idiot. He had a valid good retort, much to Harris's dismay. I'll wear a toga over it. Thomas shook his head. No, you won't, and neither will you, Boner. I want you both dressed well for the occasion. So after this sacred meal, go home and dress up. Then meet me back here. I smirked and simply turned my head, realizing he wanted us to do this most likely. It is because you want to skip most of the mass, isn't it? Thomas turned his head and looked at me, lowered his hand back down over the sausage, and said with a humorous look on his face, "No. Why on earth would you imply something like that? I am a dedicated follower, sorry, and firm believer of all those draconian gods." Harris and I laughed out loud at the table as Thomas smirked, eating his sausage. Sorry, I'm glad it all went away. After this, it all seemed to go for the better. I went home after our meal to dress, and so did Harris. Harris lived further away from me, and I decided I had some extra time to write down everything I was going through today. I must admit that I'm hoping, and I have hoped, that my sour relation with Tommy would end after today. I mean, I did go behind his back, and I did affect his business rather badly. I felt I owed him one, and a big favor at that. I thought about what he said at the table, and I wondered, as I was dressing up, whether or not if he's right. Is he right? Is it all just a phase? Is that how life throughout time truly is? Is that how everything evolves? We simply make one problem after the other, but decide which one we keep, which one we replace, and so on. It seems there's no end to it all. I sometimes wondered what the point was of our mafioso swing here. However, I also like how Tommy viewed it. He didn't care for it all. He just knew business was business, and the time we are in now is important. That is what I got from him after tonight. That is all what I learned. Fuck the LGBTQ movement. Fuck the world and the people's problems. Let them all drown in it and enjoy spending my time how I want, when I want. And now the next thing is the interlude, the confession. This will be a bonus to you guys, but if you understood the story so far, and this is where I'm pausing, the Book of Dreams story is about several characters, and you see the story through their eyes. Now, this story I read to you before was the story of three mafioso, and mafioso means three people who are a medieval mafia. So they're around in the times of the Roman Senate, so the ancient Rome, but it's in this case it's not ancient Rome, it's ancient Dragonlands. The Dragonlands is a sacred place full of harpies, full of elves, Khazari, custom races in this world that I invented, so my own races. And the reason I read this chapter is because my friend said to me, a lot of people might get offended by this. And I wanted to release it online to see what people think about it, and I want to hear your opinion. What do you think about Dany Bones' opinion on LGBTQ movement? What do you think about this character Harris, who kept on trying to understand more what Thomas was about? Do you think Thomas Kurt's actions are terrible? Do you think the way he addressed his subordinates, the way his opinion he held over the transgender that was killed, do you think he had every right to comment as he did, hold his opinion as he did? So the next chapter is between a priest and a blind elf. The Cathedral of Notre-Dame is one of the shiniest and brightest examples, tourist attractions, Gothic sceneries of the Great Draco City, or City of Dragons. It was often referred to as our heaven of the Dragonlands, due to its immense size and achievement. It was a gigantic church that was built by harpies, the creatures that ruled the Dragonlands, and built over an ancient elven cemetery. There are statues, stained glass, rose windows, arabesques, I'm sorry if I didn't read that correctly, denticulations, capitals, bas-reliefs, combining the imagination throughout time to the arrangement which best suits the cathedral. From within and from the outside dwells unity and order. The grand cathedral is immovable, indestructible, and none have ever threatened it throughout time. It reaches for the heavens, and therefore it is a heaven. The art within Notre-Dame transpired throughout centuries. It transformed and evolved throughout the years by experienced and passionate artists that have left it to the clergy to welcome the outcasts, the poor, and the lost alike. There were many prayers and songs, voices echoing and throbbing throughout those massive halls, as there were many confessionals. The priests and priestesses welcomed all in one to the confession booth where they could share their sins, what troubled the back of their minds, and sometimes talking to someone who would truly help from uncovering one's problems. However, what are people afraid of? Well, they are afraid of confessing the truth. They confess most of the truth, but they hold back secrets. The priestess sat in her booth and just finished with one of the confessionals. Dismissing the person before another took the seat, the human priestess, the oracle, looked over to see an elven gorgon, and all elves are blind but not deaf. When she took her seat, she did not say a word, and the priestess instead said, "Welcome, young one. Trust the grace of the gods and their mercy. Confess your sins sincerely and truthfully, comfortably." The priestess didn't even bother to wave her right hand, and simply kept hands placed over her lap as two candlelights on both sides of the booth shone a radiant light within a warming and nurturing light. I want to pause, folks, for a moment. Just let me have a little sip of water. And you can read if you want. I feel parched from too much speaking. I haven't set foot within this cathedral ever to confess my sins, because those whom we serve have told me I have no sin at all. How the god Mars would be proud of my deeds instead. The elf responded to the priestess, who thought about what she had just heard, and leaned her head closer in order to listen. She looked closer through the small wooden screen to see the elf. Her head leaned against the cushion in the back of the booth, while her three tails were lying behind and around as if protecting her. As for the three tails, yes, elven gorgons have three tails in my book, and they appear snake and tail-like, if people need to know. Okay, the priestess responded with a short reply before continuing. You are a soldier, she assumed, because all who serve the government or the senate of the Dragon Empire fought to appease the gods. Chief among them was Mars himself. An assassin. The elf, she clarified her profession, and the priestess had gulped, hoping that this assassin wasn't here to either kill her or silence her, perhaps deliver a warning. These are medieval times, and it wouldn't be surprising for her if someone had paid a crazed maniac to kill her, but she decided to ignore these assumptions, for she believed there was an alternative motive. Perhaps this child truly felt guilt in some way, and just had to confess after serving the Senate for so long. You received soldiers in here before that confessed to murder. The priestess felt uneasy every time someone would ask her this question, but she was sworn to an oath, that of truth. Yes, they have. The elf's ears had risen for a moment. They moved back and forth as these words caught her attention. Were the gods able to forgive them for what they've done? The elf asked, and the priestess leaned her head back to her seat. The elf was relaxing, and she seemed quite calm. Her voice was soothing and relaxing to the priestess. It sounded depressed, unhappy, but eager to confess and talk what was on her mind. The priestess thought if this assassin is playing games or not, but felt a feeling in her gut that there was something more to this assassin, something emotional stirring within her and breaking apart. Yes, even if they have committed grave sins, but only if they represented with true contrition. The priestess responded to the elf's question, but even she found that to be half true in her mind, and even she had questions sometimes to the gods, depending on the person, the weight of the sins about that matter. So even murder? The elf remained curious, and the priestess, upon hearing this, had her eyes widened with surprise. But it wouldn't also be the first time she heard something like this being asked within a public cathedral. Yes, even murder. They confessed killing, murdering, pillaging, plundering, and other grave sins in front of the very eyes of Notre Seal. The priestess responded much to the elf's delight, with a smile upon hearing a heartfelt and truthful reply. Including rape, scourge tactics, and the mere joy of some of them felt upon lying to you how sorry they've truly felt before they go back out there and sin again? The priestess was shocked by this question, and could not understand now whether or not the elf was truly confessing or not. Yes to the first, yes to the second, but I'm afraid I do not have the answer to the third. Excuse me, sorry. Every confessional here is private, out of public eye, and I do the best of my ability, as well as other members of the faith, to help those in need of others. For instance, you've come here to speak, and I'm hoping that you come truthfully in order to ease the burdens that you carry upon your soul, your conscience. You've stated you've never stepped in this booth to confess before. Surely you must have stepped in today for something that is on your mind. Something that you cannot find an answer to on your own, or perhaps something else. The priestess truly did try everything in her power to get through the soul on the other side, and the elf was eager to listen, eager to respond, and more eager to learn. Some people lived in a prison of guilty conscience for years, but I assure you, priestess, I have no guilty conscience. I have grown to accept the world for what it is, and I have grown to accept for what the people are in the great circle of life. I compare myself to them, but I do not relate myself to them. The elf's response left the priestess with more questions than the one that was confessing instead. As is your right. So what made you decide to confess? The priestess paused for a moment before deciding to correct herself. I mean, to step within the booth to finally talk to a member of the faith after such a long time. The priestess tried to understand and get more information before she could help the child, like a psychiatrist with her patient that the elf believed the priestess was doing, but she would play along. I don't know, said the elf, and the priestess turned her head. Her head moved back for a second there, and she couldn't believe what she just heard. Not all of us have a clear answer to everything, Mother. Not even you. You do not have an answer about whether or not those that confessed to you spoke truly and faithfully. The priestess raised her head in silence and wondered if perhaps somebody told her, confessed to her, some crucial information she wouldn't have heard of before that might have lured the assassin, but she couldn't recall any instances. Still, of course, fearing for her life. I do not know when it is going to be the final day on this good earth for me, whether or not if I will die alone or not. So let us maybe decide to confess to come in here and have a chat with you. The elf nodded her head thoughtfully. Well, I've heard senators, patricians, plebs, legionnaires, auxiliaries, and so on and so forth laugh out about their confessionals, while there are many others who are sincere, many who claim the faith helped them in some form or the other. Some claimed the faith had saved their souls from damnation, and spoke of the love of the gods. The elf kept on talking, and the priestess was far more interested in listening to what she had to say, rather than responding. She was hoping it would lead to some sort of clarity. They all claim they seek forgiveness, but only purge themselves, absolve themselves of all sin upon their own death. They are withered seeds at best. If there are some spelling issues, folks, I'm sorry, and I try to fix them whenever I come past them like this. So I will fix that. The priestess felt his soul lost her way, or perhaps her will was strong, but her dislike for society was too much. What do I confess? Nothing to you, the faith, or the gods, but to myself I confess. I sincerely confess the truth over and over again. Give me a moment, folks. Busy! 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 Moment. I said I'm busy.
Dinner.
Okay.
Well, dođi dok je toplo, jer hladne jaja nemaju.
Okay, just... I don't want to comment there. What do I confess? Nothing to you, the faith, or the gods. But to myself I confess, I sincerely confess the truth over and over again. I confess that I'm tired about everyone ignoring it, even you. The priestess leaned her head forth and closer. What do you mean? She asked the young elf, who smirked. My truth that I know is the truth of the world. Your gods do not appear, for they do not exist, and our people worship fiction instead of dealing with the fear of death. They are bred ignorant since birth, and those who refuse to be spoon-fed are the worst, but most elevated above all. There are actors playing senators, and there are faiths playing shepherds. There are fields where there are sheep that eat the resources, smoke their grass, and mow it day after day. The elf got up from her seat and walked to her door. "Where are you going? Sit down, please." The priestess wanted her to sit down so that they may continue their talk, but the elf, "Farewell, priestess." Bid the priestess farewell. She opened the door, okay, how the hell did I do that, of the confessional room and said, "May we speak again one day in peace." She closed the door once she stepped out, and the priestess was left in silence, wondering what had just transpired before her very eyes. The elf walked through the massive halls of Notre Dame among crowds after crowds of the people, towards the cathedral doors. The musicians played their instruments, and their singers sung their songs. The chorus gathered, the lanterns moved, and people sung with the rest of the chorus while the three mafioso friends are fully dressed up, ready to attend mass as they approach the heavens of the Dragonlands. The elf opened the large metal wooden-clad doors and stepped down onto the first step as snow descended down to her from above. She looked up, almost like she saw a revelation, and then smiled. She opened her arms, closed her eyes, and then said, "Snow," lovingly, as she felt it upon her lips, and her tails rose all around her that frightened the surrounding citizens that walked up the very steps of Notre Dame. She leaned her head back down, opened her eyes even though a blind elf could not even see. And that is the end of my tale, ladies and gentlemen. And this is how it continues with another character's log. Up here, I wrote more. I wrote how the story goes, where it starts, and this is the first log. And I hope you enjoyed my read. And if you want to read this, read it. Go ahead. I will scroll through it quickly. I will just, if you want to, go ahead. It's this is not a happy tale, and honestly, it shouldn't be treated as a happy tale. And it's very sensitive to some audiences. Very sensitive. That's why my friend told me, please do not release it. But I said, nah, I'm going to release it. And yeah, please comment, rate, subscribe, or hate on it. Give me a dislike or like, anything. But just so you know, not every character in this book and not every character in the world should be treated as you think the character should be treated or should be like. This is three characters in a restaurant talking to one another with full honesty and thinking about nothing more but business and what's in their mind. And every tirade touches upon the characters and connects them together. This is a short story from the Book of Dreams, Evolution. A part 1 I'm writing and hoping to release soon to all audiences. It's longer than all of this, and this short story is just a bonus I plan to add with the book. However, I really want people to comment, and I unfortunately couldn't have found people to comment on it on Wattpad since the community is shitty. So I decided, screw it, I'm just going to do it here on YouTube. Why is Wattpad a shitty community? I have so many reasons, but I don't want to get into it. Just know that I'm hoping to release it here and see what people think. And I'm not shitting on Wattpad, I'm not giving them ill reviews. I just don't like it there. I don't like the way they do things. I don't like most of the fan fiction that they share there. If you Google some videos, you can hear some of this really terrible fan fiction. I'm not saying my story is perfect either, but I'm saying, my God, that's what I'm saying. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good day, and I'm going to eat now because my brother called me a while ago. He caught me off doing the story, and I'm already late as it is. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and peace.